Wow, okay, I'm back. We're going to try this again. Absolutely crazy. From the top, right? Why not? We'll just have to clip that out of the edited version of the show. Thank you very much. Never a dull moment. I'll tell you, the European charters, they're kind of hard to get used to, and they're a little bit wacky. So I just wanted to make sure I had enough battery to be able to be with you this entire time. I am, as you can see, coming to you live from Switzerland. And ladies and gentlemen, I mean, history is being made. Kamala absolutely humiliated. And you know who else was humiliated in the process was none other than the mainstream media. Mainstream media really taking it on the chin as Kamala had quite a moment there, and everything that they have done up until this point in time has been to prevent something like this.
70. The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes.
And there you have it. Wow. Welcome to 2025. Welcome to the Trish Regan Show. Make sure you subscribe, share, like, comment, and hit the bell so you know when I'm live. I'm live a little bit earlier than normal today, but that's in part because I'm traveling. It is good to have all of you here. I'll tell you, they're not liking this. Over on, for example, The View. No, The View's Sunny Houston, who really, if you ask me, is skating on thin ice. I'm not quite sure why she's willing to keep going there. Even her colleague Whoopi Goldberg has dialed it back, saying, I'm going to wait and see. I don't want to make comments until let me see what happens. Anyway, she made this wild accusation, this insane comparison, which, you know, if you ask me, you listen to the whole thing here, she starts making these comparisons to World War II and Nazi Germany, and I somehow suggesting that J6 in 2021 was the equivalent of that. And I just find this amazingly insulting to history, to the individuals that died, to the Jews that were slaughtered, to our allies that were killed. I mean, this is just so far out in left field, if you can even say that anymore, because it's clearly worse. But watch and we can react together.
I think we need to find moral clarity, you know. On January 6th, where it belonged, squarely on Donald Trump's shoulders. Mm-hmm. And then you started seeing people backtrack that, mm-hmm. and losing their moral center. You had Condoleezza Rice, I believe, on this very show saying, you know, we need to move on from January 6th. Mm-hmm. I say no. You don't move on, because January 6th was an atrocity. It was one of the worst moments in American history. And when you think about the worst moments in American history, you know, like World War II, things that happened, you know, like the Holocaust, chattel slavery. We need to never forget, because past becomes prologue if you forget any race.
So, what? Really? That's the comparison you're going to make, honey bunny? I mean, that is just so atrocious and insulting to history, insulting to the lives that were lost. You know, look, I'm not gonna say that it was, you know, a great day. All right, don't get me wrong, but I am going to tell you this: the media very deliberately tried to make more of that because they felt like this was the perfect way to cancel him. So, you know, he didn't tell people to stand down soon enough. Therefore, this is entirely his fault. We're going to sue him from here to kingdom come. We've got 2 lawsuits related to J6 from Jack Smith, which, by the way, he's just gone sort of quietly away. Well, not entirely quietly. We're going to have an update on what's going on down at Mar-a-Lago. But you do see that they tried to run with this as much as they could. They turned it into a primetime special, and all the video was shot by none other than Alexandra Pelosi, who is the daughter of Nancy Pelosi, documentary filmmaker that she is. And they just ran it over and over and over again in a loop. And the idea was you were supposed to always hate Trump and anyone associated with the MAGA movement forever. And what happened? Actually, the inverse of all of that happened. And so they're having a hard time on The View. a really hard time. And they're also having a hard time over on one other little network, one MSNBC. There's one anchor over there who just doesn't seem to be able to get with the program. She's really having a hard time. And she's in the middle of contract negotiations, so I have a feeling those are not going to go very well for her. This is MSNBC host Joy Reid, who's now, if you read between the lines, I think making a very threatening statement. Let's watch.
Well, I hate to be the fly at the picnic table, but you can't peacefully transfer power to an insurrectionist simply because it took them an extra 4 years to finish the job. This was a violent transfer of power, the most violent in U.S. history, if we're being honest.
Really? Really? I mean, I saw what you saw. You think that was a violent transfer of power? Come on. So you see where they're going with this. This is a woman who already is sort of sowing the seeds of, if you ask me, some violence. Take a look at what she said right after the election, trying to once again stoke this division between left and right, black and white, men and women. Of course, in this case, she's saying she's done with all women, all white women specifically, whites in general. Here's Joy Reid saying how black women need to lead the way forward in her very divisive, frightening way.
Hey, I just want to give some free advice to the white progressives, particularly white progressive women who may be thinking about marching against the Trump victory, maybe putting back on the P-word hats and doing that thing. I would just say probably don't send any of those invites to any black women you know. I'm just going to tell you right now, they're not coming. I'm pretty sure black women have resigned from the Save America Coalition, Save Democracy Coalition, and definitely the Save the Democratic Party Coalition. I think that's probably not happening. I would just keep those invites maybe among your own friends because I don't think they're coming. But yeah, I think black women are now on the Save Black Women, Prioritize Black Men, and prioritize black communities, black businesses, and that. And, you know, the black spaces, but Save America, Save the Democratic Party. Yeah, I don't think that's happening.
So what exactly does that mean? What exactly is she trying to do? Why does she want to encourage this division? If I were MSNBC and I were the bosses there, I'd be asking some of these questions, especially amidst this contract negotiation. I do think if they're going to fire anyone, she would be one of the first to go, although they may be nervous about doing so in light of all of this noise that she has been making. But do not forget, this is a woman who's basically saying, you know, black America needs to desert the Democrat Party. This is a woman who's saying that you need to, if your family supported Trump, stay away from that family at Thanksgiving and Christmas. She quite notoriously, infamously said that. And now she's effectively threatening some kind of violence, saying that this was a violent taking over of the country by the Trump movement. I mean, this is somebody who really and truly, I think, belongs in her very own special place and probably not on an actual network, right? Let her go do her little podcast. It's not that bad over here in podcast world, let me just tell her. But, you know, you really can't be in a network space in a publicly traded company. Do not forget, Comcast is severing ties with MSNBC and all of its cable networks. They're going to be spun off into what's being called, for lack of a better term right now, SpinCo, and that's going to be happening relatively soon. So you can see that the network itself wants to distance itself. Comcast as a cable company is hanging on to NBC, by the way. So it's not like they were getting rid of everything. They just want to get rid of one Joy Reid and maybe the team over at Morning Joe, and understandably so. Look, the media was pretty awful in the way it went after Trump from the very beginning. I mean, I remember back in it wasn't even 2020. I mean, we can go all the way back to 2016 when you saw all of these people over and over again, led by none other than Jimmy Carter and Hillary Clinton, trying to say that Donald Trump was not legit. I mean, think about who started it all.
Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put in office because the Russians interfered.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president.
The president-elect, although legally elected, is not legitimate.
I don't see the president-elect as a legitimate president.
You said you believe that Russia's interference altered the outcome of the election.
I do. We have a president who, if in fact it is proven, has been assisted by the Russians and may in fact not be a legitimate president.
The one thing that Trump is fearful of when it comes to his being president is that finally we will see how illegitimate his victory actually was.
Wow. I mean, think of that, right? We don't have to play the whole thing. I think there's like 10 minutes of it, but it's just unbelievable, put together by courtesy of the RNC, of course. But that is powerful when they're out there saying, oh, you know, he's not legit. And you say, wait a second, he just tried to like go back and say, can we have another recount of some of these votes? They were the ones saying all along he was not a legitimate president. You see on the bottom of my screen a promotion for one of our great show sponsors. That would be American Heart for Gold. If you're interested in investing in gold, you know it's something that I invest in. It's part of a well-diversified portfolio and something that, in my estimation, really helps fight inflation. Give them a ring, 1-844-495-1115, or you can text my name, Trish, to 65532. Text Trish to 65532 for your chance to get up to $15,000 right now in free silver. Important to have that hedge and the diversification. So not only is MSNBC all worked up, not only is The View all worked up about J6, not willing to let it go, but you know, there's another network out there, one CNN, that is still imploding over all of this. In fact, there was a panel just within the last 24 hours that was on, and one of the conservatives on the panel, the only conservative, I should say, on the panel, was saying basically, you know, you guys need to get over it. You just need to get over it. The country's over it, for goodness sakes. Why can't the media get over it? Here, watch.
All I would say is, do you want to be on the right side of this in the history books, or do you want to be the villain in this story? Because in 100 years, your great-great-grandkids are going to know you as the wrong side of this issue, not the right side. And how is that going to feel? Because you can whitewash it as much as you want in the moment. There is no confusion, none, as to what happened. And it is not the same as someone on the House floor raising their hand and saying, I have a question about this vote.
That's not what happened on the House floor. They tried to stop the counting of the electoral votes in every election.
Wait, wait, Scott.
Yeah. I was there, man. So
when Al Gore certified the election, he did not even allow them to make the point of order. It was out of order.
How many weeks did he hold up the counting of the votes?
This is why
You didn't hold up for recount.
we probably won't be able to move on from January 6th. You're my friend, but I know you're smarter than that. I know that you're smarter than comparing what happened.
The country has already moved on.
No.
It's everybody today that's having a meltdown that hasn't moved on.
Trump keeps bringing it up.
We're not having a meltdown. We watched the vice president do her job, just as we had to wait 14 hours, but nonetheless watch my.
You see? So no, they haven't moved on. And as I said earlier in the show, I'm going to play it again because I think it's worth watching and just letting it sink in how drastic and extreme these people are. One, Sunny Houston over on The View, a show that's in a very treacherous position at this moment in time, is continuing to not move on in a way that actually is really divisive and dangerous for our future. But, you know, I don't think her future is that long on the show, shall we say. Let's take a peek.
I think we need to find moral clarity, you know, in this country. And I just remember after January 6th, you had someone like Mitch McConnell placing the blame on January 6th where it belonged, squarely on Donald Trump's shoulders. And then you started seeing people backtrack that and losing their moral center. You had Condoleezza Rice, I believe, on this very show saying, you know, we need to move on from January 6th. I say no. You don't move on, because January 6th was an atrocity. It was one of the worst moments in American history. And when you think about the worst moments in American history, you know, like World War II, things that happened, you know, like the Holocaust, chattel slavery, we need to never forget, because past becomes prologue if you forget any race.
Yeah, lovely. So, one Sunny House. You can see the media's having a really hard time here. I don't know if they're ever going to get over this. And they have a version of the facts in their head that's very cemented, that in their own little myopic way is the equivalent of something like Nazi Germany and World War II. And that's really concerning, right? Or slavery. I mean, that is really, really concerning, because when you think of all the lives lost and the brutality of those moments, to be out there comparing J6, which, you know, may not have been a perfect day in American history, but certainly was not the equivalent of Nazi Germany, that's problematic. And that's when they just lose all of this. They lose the argument. By the way, another quick shout out for one of our great sponsors, that would be Balance in Nature. I take my fruits and veggies every single day. By the way, I took the gummies with me on this trip, and I do take them every day. It's important for that vitamin D, although I'm getting a little, what do you know? Right here, right now, in sunny Switzerland. I'm in Zermatt. You can see right there the Matterhorn behind me. It's just amazing. I've been doing some skiing with the family and the kids. And you know what? I feel great. I really do. I feel great, and I feel strong, and I feel healthy, and part of that is just making sure I live a good lifestyle, drinking lots of water, getting my exercise, and taking my balance in nature, my vitamins every single day, fruits and veggies, the gummies. You can do that too. Just go check them out on their website. I'm going to put their phone number up as well, so if you'd like to call them, you can. We'll put that in the show notes for you. You can get 35% off right now, plus free shipping if you just use my name, Trish, Trish, when you go to balanceofnature.com. So again, give them a ring or go over to the website. You'll hear a lot of testimonials besides just mine. It is pretty good stuff. Okay, so we've got some breaking news I want to get to right now. Trump attorneys are filing a motion to effectively squash and block Jack Smith's final report there on the Mar-a-Lago documents. Remember how the FBI did that big raid on Mar-a-Lago and they said Donald Trump took all this special stuff from the White House? Well, that whole thing was like put to bed, I thought. So I was a little surprised when I saw this, like it's coming back in some way, shape, or form. The Trump team just had to file this emergency motion to block another Jack Smith report. But don't forget, it was Judge Aileen Cannon down in Florida who was like, well, you guys don't have a leg to stand on because Jack Smith was not appropriately appointed. You didn't have the authorization. You never got it from the Senate. Remember that? So it was a technicality, but a big technicality. Trump's Florida case stunningly dismissed after judge finds appointment of special counsel Jack Smith violated the Constitution was the headline here in the New York Post, and this would have been in July of 2024. So now, what are we doing having to, deal with Jack Smith again? I'm a little surprised by this, but he wanted to file this final report, which the other side, Donald Trump's lawyers, are arguing is just not fair, not right, and really shouldn't be happening since he was, quote, unconstitutionally appointed and funded. That was the court's own finding. That was what the judge decided. So why is he going to somehow get the final word here? This is a final report that he's looking to issue, and their concern is that Attorney General Garland is, what is he going to do? As soon as he gets that report, he's going to make it public. And therefore, it's embarrassing not just to the future president, but also to some civilians that are involved, Carlos de Oliveira and Waltin Nauta, who were named in this. So they're like, you can't do this, right? It doesn't make any sense. So they're saying since he was disqualified, then he's no longer entitled access, so therefore he shouldn't be sharing these kinds of materials like the final report in such a publicly inappropriate manner. The final report, and I quote here from their motion to dismiss, the final report promises to be a one-sided, slanted report relying nearly exclusively on evidence presented to a grand jury and subject to all requisite protections, and which is known to Smith only as a result of his unconstitutional appointment, in order to serve a singular purpose, convincing the public that everyone Smith charged is guilty of the crimes charged. So I should think they should be able to relatively smoothly get this thing dismissed. But who knows? I mean, these folks on the left are really rabid and they're really upset that he won, and they're doing everything they can, whether it be there in Florida or whether it be in New York with Judge Maron refusing to not sentence him. I mean, I'll get to that in a second, but it's another layer to this story. I mean, they basically want to be able to send him to the White House as a convicted felon. And they want to embarrass him with whatever they are trying to put forward with this report, which, frankly, I don't think they can. I mean, the judge already said, Jack, you're done. And he's already packed his bags and gone home. He's left by the wayside all of those federal cases that he had against him for J6, and then of course the Supreme Court ruling on all this. So what is the point other than pure politics? And isn't that kind of disgusting that we're at the stage we're dealing with all just that pure politics? A quick shout out for my financial research company, 76research.com. You can use code word dollar if you're interested in investing. You should be interested in investing, especially now, because I think there's a lot of good stuff to come, really and truly. Go check that out, 76research.com, code word dollar, DOLLAR. You get it for $1 a month for the first couple of months. The 76 report, there are a lot of model portfolios on there as well, with 10 to 15 names in each. Companies that Rob Horton, my dear friend and colleague there and founder of 76 Research, with me. Believe in for your future. So go check that out today, 76research.com. Judge Maron, he's the latest and greatest to be making the headlines. He has basically said he's going to sentence the president no matter what. So now we're in this 11th hour because the sentencing is supposed to come before January 10th. And given that that's 3 days away, they definitely need to do something fast. So the Trump legal team has put forward a filing. Judge Juan Maron has denied Donald Trump's request, of course, to postpone his conviction in that quote-unquote hush money case. And so I'm like, why is Judge Maron the arbiter of everything? Like, why is he making all these decisions? Can we not escalate this to some adults in the room? Are there any adults in the room? I don't know. I get the feeling that you do have to go to the appellate level in order to get anybody intelligent, anybody smart. This was a case that even Alvin Bragg himself did not want to bring because it was a very challenging one to try to implicate the newly elected president. So even Alvin Bragg didn't want to bring it. Finally, somehow they convinced him to because, that's his ticket to his political career. So he did. And Judge Maron, who should have recused himself. Remember, he's the guy whose daughter makes money off of all of the Trump emails where she's sending them to Democrats. She's working on behalf of the Democrat Party and trying to basically fundraise off of these cases. Yes, he should have recused himself. That's just a little too close. Church and state, buddy, church and state. He doesn't obviously believe in any kind of church and state. He figured he was free to do this because he had his own, if you ask me, personal vendetta. Consider what he said to the jury. Just pick an option, any option, A, B, or C. It doesn't really matter whether you think he's guilty of this crime or that crime. Just do you think he's guilty? Do you think he's guilty of a crime? And therefore, this is how you decide it. So that happened. And now we're in a situation where Donald Trump's team is saying, wait a second, why are you doing this? Why can't this wait? I'm just moving my camera around a little bit, guys, because of the sun and what we're getting here in Switzerland today. But this is effectively a situation now where you... I really am live. I'll be back in my studio later this week. But anyway, this is a situation where you have a very biased judge trying to do whatever he can in the 11th hour to really make Trump look bad. And I think that it's got to get to the appeals court as fast as possible. We do need adults to be stepping in. The sooner, the better. But it's not just that, right? I mean, in New York right now, you still have Letitia James out there. Good old Letitia, who's made it clear she'd love to bankrupt the guy.
4 days after a judge ordered Donald Trump to pay $355 million for a decade of fraud, New York Attorney General Letitia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
Because that's the whole goal here, to somehow bankrupt him. I mean, think of how flawed that is. This is, to me, the most egregious case of all. Perhaps it's my background as a business reporter. I'm just disgusted by the idea that the state is going to come in between somehow an individual. Forget the fact that he's going to be the president, that he was the president. Just the fact that the state is trying to come in between an individual and a bank in a private transaction where there is no victim, and then try and charge him $500 million. It's nearly $500 million. I mean, this is absolutely, positively insane. And the Supreme Court, this Court of Appeals knows it. They know it, which is why if you listen, and I did a whole show on this, guys, I encourage you to go back and look at go to the Lawfare playlist because you'll see it there. I went and listened to the entire appeal, and you had someone representing Letitia James, and the judges just berated her. They were like, well, come on. Like, you guys don't even have a victim. What are you thinking? What are you doing? And how do we prevent something like this from happening again in the future? So I would just say to those judges, you know what? It's time to get off your you-know-whats and make sure that this comes through in the favor of the president, because it actually means a lot, if you would, for the future of New York City and for the future of New York's economy. This stuff really is pretty pretty wild. I mean, just absolutely wild to see. Another quick shout out to our sponsors over at American Heart for Gold for helping to make this show come to you free every day, making that possible. If you're interested in investing in gold, you know it's a big part of my own strategy in terms of diversification. I would encourage you to give them a ring or to go to trishlovesgold.com. Trish Loves Gold. We'll put that in the show notes too. Just give us a minute. We'll get that in for you. trishlovesgold.com or text Trish to 65532. You can also call them at 1-844-495-1115, 1-844-495-1115. In light of all this craziness, for goodness sakes, I look at the Letitia James case and I'm like, yeah, that's when you really want to make sure that you own gold, right? I mean, considering. This has been obviously a crazy time, and there's a lot of change happening right now, and some of this is for the good, although I can't help it. Maybe I'm just a cynic. I'm looking at what's going on over at Meta, and I'm kind of just asking some questions. Did you see who the new employee is on the board of directors? They brought in none other than Dana White, who's terrific, of course, and a longtime Donald Trump supporter. I want you to see him here on election night.
Nobody deserves this more than him, and nobody deserves this more than his family does. This is what happens when the machine comes after you. What you've seen over the last several years, this is what it looks like. Couldn't stop him. He keeps going forward. He doesn't quit. He's the most resilient, hard-working man I've ever met in my life. His family are incredible people. This is karma, ladies and gentlemen. He deserves this. They deserve.
He's right about that. So that's Dana White. He runs UFC, and UFC has been great to Trump, and there's been a tremendous base of support among those UFC fighters, and you've seen Trump at those fights. Zuckerberg is hiring him to join the board of directors of Facebook, and I mean, I think it's a little interesting. It's a little bit strange, and you got to ask yourself, has Mark really had a change of heart? I'm not so sure about that. I think Mark is a smart business person, and Mark understands which way the wind blows. I hope he's had a change of heart. He did make some comments, if you recall, on Bloomberg Television, saying he was blown away after the president was assassinated, nearly assassinated, in the way he stood up after that assassination attempt and rallied himself and the crowd saying fight, fight, that it was just remarkable, and he was blown away by that. But you also have to remember some of the things that were done along the way. I mean, after all, the Facebook canceled his account, and that had to have gone all the way up to Zuckerberg. So does that change now? I mean, there's some reasons to believe it might. In terms of the motives or the authenticity of it, I'm not so sure. But here's Jason Miller, senior advisor to the president, very instrumental in the campaign, speaking to CNN about this very issue.
Story that there was a Politico story about a new book that's set to be published next week from your boss, the former president, that says that Mark Zuckerberg, the head of Meta, plotted against him during the 2020 election, and that the Meta chief executive would, quote, spend the rest of his life in prison, end quote. We also, of course, saw Zuckerberg send a letter to Congress expressing regret about some of the things Facebook did during the last election around misinformation. Does the former president feel this way about Mark Zuckerberg? Does he believe that he should go to jail?
Well, President Trump certainly had a right to be angry at the time, and especially looking back at the censorship that went on in 2020. I mean, they used this guise of Russian misinformation to outright censor a story that turned out to be very true with the Hunter Biden laptop. And it did manipulate the election. In fact, a post-election study from the Media Research Center said that 1 out of every 7 Biden voter would have looked to go a different way, possibly to President Trump, if they knew about the truth of the foreign business dealings and everything else on Hunter Biden's laptop, specific to Joe Biden and the international.
And is this a jailable offense in your view, in the former president's view?
I'm not a lawyer. I'll leave that up to the lawyers to go and discuss that. But I do think that there was blatant election interference, and there should be some accountability to that. It can't just be a talking point from the left. People have to be held responsible, especially those 51 intelligence officers, for knowing that that was a lie and pushing this Russian disinformation hoax. But again, the important thing here is it's not back in 2020. We're talking about the future, but a future where we're going to have record low inflation, a security secure border. We're not going to have these wars popping up everywhere. And that's where I think the difference is in this campaign, is that President Trump's going to put more money back in people's pockets, but he's telling them exactly how he's going to do it.
So you can see Jason is he's making the pivot there to all the good things that were going to happen that were conducted before the election. So he's referencing the campaign, et cetera. But the reality, I think, the big takeaway there is that Zuckerberg realizes that the train has left the station. And yes, good things are going to happen. And he wants to be in on that. I mean, it's one of the reasons why he ran down to Mar-a-Lago, did he not, to go have a meeting with former elected, newly elected, soon-to-be president again, Donald Trump. And I think, it's possible that he had this change of heart. I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think a lot of people are suddenly realizing that this movement is because of someone, because somebody is willing to stand up. And we haven't had that. Let's face it. Nobody's had that. You go all around the world. I'm in Switzerland right now, and people are excited about Donald Trump. You look at what's happening in Canada right now with Macron being gone. You know why? Because they had terrible inflation. They had terrible immigration issues. And people are like, we don't trust these leaders. They're not on our side. Gosh, if we could get somebody like Trump over here, that's what I keep hearing wherever I'm traveling. So I think that's an important recognition right now. But, the elites don't love it. Who really doesn't love it is Macron, because he's facing similar problems to Trudeau, right? They've got horrible immigration challenges there in France. They've got horrible economic challenges, horrible inflation. And so consequently, he's actually at risk, as is the elite establishment party there in Germany. You saw Elon taking on the UK. I mean, everyone's sort of fair game at this point because we have a way of communicating and you can't shut us down. And all of a sudden, the leaders are being held accountable.
10 years ago, if we'd been told that the owner of the largest social media networks would support an international reactionary movement and directly intervene in elections, including Germany, who would have believed it? This is the world we live in which we have to conduct diplomacy.
Yeah, that's look, the world in which you live in now is a very different world where you actually have to be accountable. And yes, historically, leaders are accountable and you have elections and you can get rid of them. But what happens if the media is not presenting the facts as is? What if the media is so biased and so in bed, if you will, with the elite establishment to the point where they're willing, like they did in the U.S., to cover up for one Joe Biden in hopes that maybe he could get elected? I mean, look at what Chuck Schumer did. The media went along with all of this. He was questioned about this last weekend. He wasn't questioned hard enough, in my opinion, but he continued to just lie through his teeth.
Obviously, there has been a lot of focus on President Biden's role in this. You were obviously in close contact with President Biden well before the public tuned into that debate that ultimately led to him stepping down. I want to play you a little bit of something you said last year. Take a look.
I talk to President Biden, regularly, sometimes several times in a week, or usually several times in a week. His mental acuity is great. It's fine. It's as good as it's been over the years. All this right-wing propaganda that his mental acuity has declined is wrong.
Leader Schumer, what do you say to Americans who feel as though you and other top Democrats misled them about President Biden's mental acuity?
No. Look, we didn't, and let's look at President Biden. He's had an amazing record. The legislation we passed, one of the most significant groups of legislation since Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, putting in 235 judges, a record, and he's a patriot. He's a great guy. And when he stepped down, he did it on his own because he thought it was better not only for the Democratic Party, for America. We should all salute him. We should all salute him.
Okay, you guys keep telling yourselves that. No one buys it. No one believes it, except for some cronies that are trying to continue on with this insane narrative that somehow he had a cold at the debate, etc. No. Joe Biden is not well, okay? He's older. And I'm not an ageist. Look, Trump's up there. but he has a very different mental acuity than one Joe Biden. Joe Biden is clearly suffering from something. And you would have been a whole lot better off if you had just admitted it from the beginning. You really would have. But, they are who they are, and I don't think that they're really going to change, despite the world demanding they change. You saw Maron earlier telling Elon, or effectively, he's signaling, he actually didn't call Elon out by name, but signaling that Elon Musk is changing things drastically. Elon coming out and calling out Britain, saying America should liberate the people of Britain from their tyrannical government. Do you agree? Do you not agree? A whole series of tweets have been posted on X by one Elon Musk. And I think that you're gearing up for a massive change here. A lot is going to change in the coming years, and it can, go spectacularly well in my estimation. I'm glass half full. I do believe that there's going to be a huge opportunity for everyone, for America, and also for the world, right? So as an investor, think about it, right? You want to be prepared as an investor for the good stuff that is to come. It's one of the reasons why I created 76 Research. Go to 76research.com. We'll put that in the show notes too. Use the code word $, at 76research.com to learn more about how you can be investing, what you should be investing in today, and really think about what's at stake here for the future. I want to thank you for joining me on this live special from Zermatt, Switzerland. We've just had so much to get to this week. So much news happening that, I got to be here with you, even if it's at some crazy hour of the morning. Usually I'm not on until the afternoon in the U.S. So if you're new to the show, thank you for being here. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the alert so you know when we're live every single day. And I will see you back here probably from the studio. It's getting a little cold. I'll see you soon. Thank you so much for joining. Bye.